Tonight features the story of one man's fight to save his inheritance.
This old house is of no importance in itself. It is no Longleat or Hatfield, yet it touches the main course of English history from the time of Edward the Confessor to the present day at many minute parts. And so long as the old walls remain, there will be 2 or 3 persons in each generation in whom they will awaken a sense of the reality of English history that cannot be got by books alone. So wrote St. Louis Strachey, eminent Edwardian, about Sutton Court.
I'd come here as a child, had known it as a boy and adolescent, but had never stayed in it, curiously enough, and found a paradise in decay, and worse decay than I expected, because although the fabric of the house was in beautiful order and the outside appearance was excellent, beneath it the monstrous outgrowths of dry rot were creeping everywhere. It became clear that it was suffering from what, in a human being's case, would be terminal cancer. So the process of renewal and restoration had to begin. Well, this bed, of course, has survived a bit better than the house. You can see from the walls here, we've done a lot of structural repair work already. Lintels have been replaced, plaster's been ripped off. And now the major work of restoration and decoration has to take place, but we're holding the conditions stable. We've stopped the wildlife from coming in through the roof up there, and this room, although in a very bad state, is now not going to get seriously worse, except for these windows. The frames are completely rotted. They are not safe. The glass will have to be replaced, and when it falls out, we don't bother to put it back in because the wood itself is so bad. So when the next phase takes place, then this is an area where a lot of new work will have to be done. But meanwhile, we're holding the position, and the structure itself is in not too bad a state. I think that most people with determination and conviction wish to see things that they've begun finish. In my case, and in our case, Sutton Court is a bit more than that, because there's an emotional commitment that is unrelated to the family connection, because this house and the landscape surrounding it happens to be what I would choose if I was starting from scratch. A place in the particular location that it is here, in the fringe of Bath and Bristol, but on the edge of Mendip, which has a very long association with a family not of great wealth, but of considerable national and local distinction, and that also is an entity of people and history, buildings in a landscape, fields and wildlife, is very special. And there aren't any in this area of quite this quality.
The old walls of Sutton Court have been in the care of the Strachey family for 400 years. The cost of keeping alive that sense of history is rising. Dry rot repairs have already reached £50,000. But Lord and Lady O'Hagan are a determined pair.
Well, it's lucky we had that tower repaired before last winter.
It is.
And if it hadn't been done, it would have been down on the floor by now.
I think the gale that affected the Barnet lies would have done for that, actually.
Certainly.
If we hadn't done it. Looks wonderful now.
The rest of the building is not too bad, but we'll need some repointing shortly.
I think we want to get rid of the moss on the top of the front door.
Yeah, well, if we got a grant for it, it would be wonderful. But as we've never had a penny from anybody yet, it would be a fine way of celebrating the first grant to remove the moss.
The court has been home to many Stracheys, a family with a distinguished history of public service, most notably as administrators in India. They were scientists, explorers, and skeptics, eccentric and interesting rather than conformist, friends of the famous rather than famous themselves. Lytton Strachey, the controversial biographer and member of the Bloomsbury set, perhaps being the exception. Today, the house reflects the changing fortunes of the family, a monument to survival.
Every family has good members and bad members. Hodges Strachey is the worst member of the Strachey family. He inherited a large fortune, Sutton Court estate, and his mother was an heiress. But by the time he died, early, the estate was in chaos. It was then left to his nephew, a young man, fortunately with great talent, Henry Strachey, who was soon employed by one of the leading political figures of the day. And that man, who saved Sutton Court for me, as well as the whole Strachey family, was Lord Clive of India. Henry Strachey was his chief administrator, his private secretary. They married first cousins. They were friends. And Clive, who died young, like Hodges, but leaving rather more behind him, helped Henry at his hour of need and gave what would nowadays be a sum approaching to millions of pounds to his young assistant when the mortgage on Sutton Court was coming to an end. So Sutton Court exists today because of Clive of India. And Henry went on to have a successful career in politics and in the royal household, but he remembered his work for Clive as the high point of his career. And it's pleasant for us to know that as well as these more formal indications of the link between the two families, we still have what is alleged to be Clive's watch. And I like to think that Henry would have looked at this watch in his old age, knowing it was because of his former boss, Clive, that Sutton Court still belonged to the Strachey family.
In the medieval heart of the house are stacked the odds and ends collected over generations. They echo a time when Sutton Court played host to large numbers of guests, and the washing up was done below stairs. Treasures and trifles to muse over. A reminder of one's place in 600 years of Strachey history.
This particular decanter was given to me by my great-uncle, the last Lord Strachey, as a christening present, a rather strange present for a young child, a solitary glass and a decanter, but it's Bristol glass and very attractive. And whatever Arthur Negus would have thought of its quality, I'm very fond of it because it represents Sutton Court to me, and it has done so since childhood.
The estate has never been wealthy enough to pay members of the family to do nothing. In his turn, Charles O'Hagan has to act to guarantee its future.
We decided that while we could carry on making economies, renovating all the farmhouses on the estate, doing the fencing, and carrying out all the other necessary repairs, maintenance, and in some cases improvements, that this wasn't going to be enough. Because in order to hang on to what remained, I sold everything else that I possessed. I own no shares. I have no other property anywhere else except one small plot of land. And this means that the economic base of the estate is now very narrow. And so it depends entirely on the fortunes of agriculture and the good management of the farms on this estate. So we thought, well, that isn't safe planning.
Safe planning meant finding new ways of generating income. Architects were commissioned, and in August 1985, their plan, The Saving of Sutton Court, was published. Restoration of the house for family use is at the heart of a complex series of planning applications. Its 60 pages include proposals for turning redundant farm buildings into private homes. Others will be let for tourist accommodation. A nature reserve is planned, and woodland will be marketed commercially. To help pay for all this, 8 new cottages are to be built in nearby Strachey village and across the parkland. Every villager was given a copy of the report. They were being asked to face change, to preserve the way things were. Clifford Stevens, a tenant at Folly Farm, hadn't changed anything for years. The 246 acres under his management are farmed traditionally with little mechanization. His meadowland grew without sprays, the woodland a haven for wildlife. He would retire to make way for the future.
Well, we've been here about 46 years, and been mostly mixed farming, and we have grown some corn, but mostly stock farming, sheep and cattle. Well, it's been harder of recent years. We always made a decent living before when we were in milk and like that when we were in dairying, but it has been more difficult since we went from dairying. I think it was a big change for Lord O'Hagan to come into it. Well, I suppose he had a trying time, really. I suppose he did what he thought was best.
In October 1985, the Planning Committee of Wansdyke District Council meets to consider applications for changes on the estate. The conversion of Sutton Court itself is approved. All the other applications are turned down. The decision was made without a site visit. But the council believe they have correctly interpreted Greenbelt policy. As disappointment looms, Charles O'Hagan feels the committee failed to grasp the spirit of the plan.
We're being put in difficulties now because conservation legislation designed to maintain historic buildings and preserve the green belt is hindering somebody whose only aim is to preserve this part of the green belt and to maintain a historic house. Now that can't be right. The original aims and intentions of the people who framed the legislation didn't lead to that sort of conclusion. So as long as there is a chance of changing the course of official attitudes towards this place into what the promoters of that legislation originally intended, then we'll carry on.
The O'Hagans are still living in a cottage near the court, and the council's decision is a major setback. It takes time to prepare an appeal, and time costs money when the estate is already stretched. Mary O'Hagan, expecting her first child, is not deterred. She has plans of her own for the garden.
One of the nice things about a garden is that however many mistakes you make, you can always put them right. And as long as one has a nice long life, you can live to see the fruits of your labour for many, many years.
It's hard to stop when you get to. Actually, we've got 2 of these clematis macropetala, which are bluebells with little white insides, which are going to grow to quite a size up here.
The biggest imponderable is as to when we can really get it started, and that I can't say for obvious reasons. I hope very much that by the time I'm 65, I shall have a garden that other people might like to come and see.
Essential maintenance goes on at Sutton Court, and by April '86, appeals to the Department of the Environment are underway. The aim is to keep the estate intact at all costs. To achieve this, there must be approval to build new houses, for only they will finance the scheme in its entirety. As the year progresses, uncertainty about the future loses itself in the comfort of doing seasonal jobs. For 400 years, Sutton Court was the focus of the community. The Stracheys endowed the tiny church and until the turn of the century owned the entire village of Strachey. Times have changed, yet interest in the family and fate of the court remains. This year the O'Hagans are away for the annual village barbecue, so there'll be a lot of speculation about the plan. The incomers do not welcome any development in the village they've made their own. The older folk have seen too many changes before to be upset at what might happen this time.
What do you think about this development that is proposed for the court?
Very ambitious.
And, well, for Strachey generally.
Oh, I think it's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I've only got one regret.
What's that?
That our villagers don't approve of them building these couple of houses here.
Well, personally, I'm opposed to it. I just don't want to spend a lot of money.
Oh, well, I can't believe that.
like
I think, well, if you're going to church, you know jolly well you've got to put something in the collection.
I frequently do that.
I mean, Mrs. Edgell, I mean, if sort of Susan wanted to come and live down here, for example, I mean, they could never afford the houses, could they?
Little bit to put in the
got to go and live away in Temple Cloud or something like that.
Isn't his lordship up here today?
No, he's not coming. No, I think it is in Devon during the week.
Is there any space?
Can I help you with some rice?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Community concern affects Charles O'Hagan both personally and publicly. He represents Devon in the European Parliament. So with one thing and another, he's away a lot. An MEP's political concerns may be important, but the battle for Sutton Court is now pressing. A solution, in part, presents itself when Avon Wildlife Trust show interest in Folly Farm. They want to run it as a national farming and wildlife centre. Buying the land means a public appeal, but already an anonymous donor has given £200,000 towards such a project. It's a unique site with rich pasture land holding rare flowers and undisturbed woodland, a haven for birds. But can Chris Johnson, director of the trust, persuade Charles O'Hagan to part with it? If he does, it'll be the first step towards breaking up the estate.
I think that, bearing in mind that what we'd like to do really with with the property is manage it as a working farm,
Yes.
but to conserve all its important wildlife habitats. I mean, just looking from here, for example, I mean, that woodland over there, the one on the skyline there, and this woodland here, what we call ancient woodland, which means that it's got its ancestry back to the last ice age.
Right.
And because of that, it has the most fantastic wealth of plants and animals. And having said that, I mean, this grassland too is also very rich. And people would appreciate it. I mean, they would enjoy it. I mean, like we're looking at it at a day like today, it's absolutely fantastic.
And as far as the farm buildings are concerned, they've always been a problem because they're not much use for modern farming and they cost a lot to maintain. How would you look after them?
First and foremost, it must stay a working farm. I mean, we don't want to destroy its atmosphere. But obviously, in order to give people some facilities and to explain what's happening and also to provide walkways and so on, we need to do quite a lot of renovation. As you've already said, the buildings are in a bit of a state at the moment and they need quite a lot of work doing to them. And while we're going to do that work, we might as well do some of the redundant buildings, which obviously appreciate some of them are now redundant, and make them into things like the classroom facilities and so on.
It'd be interesting rather than entertaining. I mean, it won't be as sort of Stowey's answer to Alton Towers.
Oh, absolutely not. The problem that the trust faces in the future is if you agree to the arrangement that we're proposing to manage the site by the land and the entire lot.
After a frustrating summer of negotiations on the rest of the estate, Charles O'Hagan's efforts to preserve his inheritance have come to nothing. His vision was not shared by the planners. He sells Folly Farm to Avon Wildlife Trust, but even then cannot afford to restore the court. The sense of betraying family history is strong, but now, a year on from his original plan to save the estate, he has no option but to sell everything. There is no modern-day Lord Clive to help this time. The house will have to be emptied of the paraphernalia of generations. Objects moved away to be restored elsewhere. The autumn months are going to be busy.
I think if you are concerned about the heritage or the environment, you see the places where people or animals live as an interconnected habitat. In order to give a fair picture of a long-term view of what was intended, we linked everything on the basis that this was it. This is what we were going to ask for. And that both people in the locality and the planners could see that no more and no less was intended. Within the way that the Green Belt is administered at the moment, the relationship between the various parts of the estate and the buildings on them was not considered by the council to be relevant. They looked at each part of the fruit salad on its own and not at the final product. The choice, given what the district council had decided, would have been between a continuing sale, field by field, of the property and or gradually dispersing the contents.
Is it this Van Dyke?
No, it's a Clive behind.
The first alternative would have merely postponed the ultimate conclusion, and the second alternative would have destroyed the most important part of the remaining evidence of a minor but interesting family's contribution to local and national history in England and Britain.
Okay, and Dan? I've got it here.
Those two considerations made us think in the end it's better to move the family home with the family things than to disperse the family things to keep what is at present the family home.
The O'Hagans are advised to wait until the spring of '87 to sell. The agents are looking for over £1 million for this particular piece of England. The house awaits its fate.
Replaced quite a few
right.
that were. And then right at the very top is Lyde's Farm. Yes, that end of the original, and that's the original chapel. One of the farm buildings has been repaired quite recently, where you park your car, because
Sutton Court was on the market for just 10 days.
Nobody who sells anything has any right to its future. And that is my view. So I am happier that it has gone to one person than I would be if it was lingering in a state of continuing decay and decline, with part sold, part not sold, and a big question mark over its future. So I think the outcome is good. All I know is that I wish the owner of it better luck than I had with Wanstead District Council. Well, looking back is pointless unless it teaches you something. Now it is better to put all these memories and past events into a file and keep it shut, and to think about the future.
And what about the future now in Devon for you and Lady O'Hagan?
It's very nice to be in a place where you can walk down the street and be met with smiles.
It's a very curious mixture, I think. It's very nice to know one's destination, but it's not the destination that we feel we should have been able to provide for the family. So, although we know perfectly well that we presented an impossible task for ourselves, it's still a shame that we didn't manage to do the impossible. I think it's, you know, for the wider family, not just the nuclear family, it is a shame. But at least we are able now to find somewhere else for the Strachey soul to reside. And we've actually found somewhere where the Strachey soul can reside quite happily. A very suitable place which will go with the pictures and the furniture and everything. So it's a bit like losing a shilling and finding sixpence, you know. Which is very nice. Ooh, it's better than not having a sixpence.